Be careful the cat. No say the cat is in the sack when you have not the cat in the sack.
Hello Serie A fan. First there were 7, now there's just 1. Unless you're a Romanista, and if you are, dai! We're here to provide solace as the Italian contingent crash out of Europe. We discuss that and the rest of the week's big stories in this episode of Scudetto. Hello, and welcome to Scudetto on what is unfortunately a bit of a somber week for Italian football. So somber, in fact, that your regular host Oscar decided to call in sick.
It's bizarre because Roma actually the only team that went through, so he should be here kind of boasting and sticking it in our faces, but no.
Maybe he didn't watch the game and he didn't want to be asked questions. Who knows? No. But in all seriousness, Oscar, get well soon. Hopefully he'll be back next week.
Also, I'm sorry for interrupting you again, but you see, Oscar's moved to like the coldest country out of the three of us, and he's constantly sick. So just make a mental note of this.
I'm sure the listeners will be making their own mental notes. But Kenny, obviously, I'm taking over the hot seat this week, and Boaz is still here from Tel Aviv. So, Boaz, how are you doing? How has your week been? And have you got a nice beer for us?
To be honest, I've not had the best of weeks on a personal level, and I was hoping that the football would kind of balance things out a little bit, but that didn't work at all the way I hoped it would.
Ouch! And on the beer front, are you doing better there? I'm sorry to hear that it's not been a great week.
As a result, I'm drinking a 7.2% BrewDog Jackhammer, which I've never had before. Little side story: I walked into a shopping center and there was a shop about the size of my fridge, basically, and there was an elderly gentleman in the corner, and he didn't really seem interested at all in selling me alcohol. But I kind of walked around his shop, and in the very corner, he had like a bunch of IPAs and great beers, and I really had to urge him to serve me so I could buy these beers. But in any case, I should be covered for a few weeks now, finally.
Good stuff. You picked a good one for tonight anyway. I've actually also got a BrewDog. Mine is Clockwork Tangerine Session IPA. It's been really nice and sunny here in Edinburgh, so I was feeling like I fancied something that was a little bit summery, and this is what I've got. I actually got a whole heap of BrewDogs for my momentous birthday the other week, so I'm just slowly working my way through those. But anyway, let's get on to the football. So we have to start, unfortunately, with the very, very disappointing week for Italian clubs in Europe. Before we delve into the depressing side of the story, good news for Roma tonight. They beat Shakhtar 2-1 and go through 5-1 on aggregate. I think we're all expecting them to go through after that great first leg that they had. We will come to Roma in a little bit more detail later on. Obviously, lots to talk about with them this week. But elsewhere, yes, obviously, Real Madrid beat Atalanta 3-1, sending Atalanta out 4-1 on aggregate. Bayern beating Lazio 2-1. So Bayern go through there 6-1 on aggregate. And Milan losing 1-0 at home at San Siro to Man United. We'll come back to Milan as well in a little bit. But Boaz, I don't really know where to start with this. It's not the first time that we've had Italian teams in recent years going out earlier really than they should. What is behind this, do you think? I mean, we've been all season talking about how great Serie A is. Have we been deluding ourselves a little bit?
I think it's a very tough question you threw on me there. Basically, I think what we've been saying all along is that Serie A is a very entertaining league, and that on their day any team can beat any other team, which makes for a very interesting league battle until Inter ran away with it. But on the European stage, time and time again, the clubs are found lacking, both in terms of personnel, but also in terms of tactics. And even the teams that at least on paper, should be doing better. That you see them showing up in Europe with possibly a more defensive mindset than even what they play in the league usually. It just hasn't been working. I've been checking the stats, and since 2007, Italy have had 2 winners in Milan and Inter and 2 finalists in Juventus. But other than that, there's only been one other semi-finalist. Usually the clubs go out in the quarterfinals, and that's just not good enough.
Yeah, I think Capello had some very, very poor Capello had been reeled out for Italian TV after every game, basically to give his opinion, and it's always the same, really. It's just like our clubs aren't good enough technically, tactically. The sort of intensity isn't there. I did hear, actually, interestingly, Francesco Guidolin on Italian radio, and he had some interesting points. One of them, which I guess to run past you, that he was suggesting that perhaps this focus that Italian football is famous for, obviously, on tactics and tactical discipline, can perhaps work against, or is in the modern game working against Italian teams. He said basically when it comes to the point in the game where you really need to force the issue, a lot of Italian clubs just seem like they're kind of rigidly stuck in this system, and it's difficult for perhaps some individuals to take the initiative, even if that means breaking with the discipline. What do you reckon, Boaz? Fair comment? Interesting point?
I think Guidolin raises a very good point, and ultimately it's also a physical issue. I think the players who play in Italy, when it comes to Europe, they don't seem as fit as their opponents. And I think I mentioned it earlier, the whole defensive mindset is just not helping in the long run. I mean, no one was expecting Lazio to beat Bayern, for example, but maybe showing a little bit more attacking guile, trying to steal something from other teams who have put them under pressure would have helped.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one. And I think I agree with you as well. I was hoping for more from Atalanta and Madrid as well. But I don't really think that's an accusation that you can throw at Atalanta, because they obviously have a very strong identity. And yes, they do have a system, but I mean, they've got a system where the wing backs quite often appear as inside forwards, and one of the centre backs quite often overlaps the sort of whoever it is at attack who's playing like as a false 9 or whatever. So yeah, I guess with Atalanta, the financial gulf to clubs like Real is just so big that just the fact that they're competing perhaps is enough. Let's move on to that Milan game though, Boaz, because we obviously were recording a little bit later tonight. Both of us watched that game. Disappointing result, but what was your snap reaction to it? Do you feel encouraged by the performance? I personally thought Milan actually played all right. I didn't think Man United necessarily deserved to go through. I thought it was quite an entertaining game. What was your reaction?
I felt this game followed some of the same themes that we saw in the Milan-Napoli game on the weekend, as well as some of Milan's recent performances. Ultimately, the vast amount of injuries has just caught up with Milan, and whereas in the past they might have scrapped through with a 1-0 victory or kind of managed to hold on to a 0-0 today against Man United, right now things that seemed quite easy in the past are looking very difficult, and players who Milan built their whole backbone on seem a little bit off the pace. Maybe they've played just too much. But also in Milan's case, I feel that with the exception of Tomori, whose energy has been great and who potentially could be a great defender. Right now, he's still got a lot to learn, but he's just moved to a new country. He's moved to a new league. So it's very positive what he's been doing so far. But with the exception of him, all the new signings have been kind of flops. You think of Mandzukic, who has barely played. He got injured in the pointless Europa League game. Milan could have really done with him, particularly with Zlatan out injured. You think of Mete, who was awful today and probably responsible for the goal. It's probably no coincidence that Torino have been going on this crazy winning run since Mete moved to Milan, because the guy is a walking liability.
Ouch.
Furthermore, Milan are, while I was saying on one of the recent episodes that Milan, with the exception of Atalanta, Milan have the most 15 players different players who have got on the score sheet. It has to be said that the likes of Salamaker, Castillejo, I think even Hakan, they haven't scored in several months. I said on a recent guest episode on Milan Obsession that Salamaker couldn't score in an Amsterdam coffee shop. So I think ultimately the goals have dried up. And again, today, Milan, they showed a lot of attacking promise. They got into the area, but when it came to killing it, it didn't work out. And probably the same can be said for the game on the weekend with Napoli.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the notable thing when Pogba came on, really, wasn't it? He just had that one chance and he was just absolutely ruthless with it. I actually thought, yeah, Milan had the chances to score in this game, but yeah, like you said, the goals appear to have dried up. And to be honest, even people like Theo Hernandez, who have, I mean, we can't be too harsh on him because he's been absolutely incredible, but even Theo wasn't really at it in this game. I mean, we saw some of the sort of powerful runs where he really sort of managed to use his pace, but there wasn't really any end product. Kessie, who was incredible in the first leg and has been incredible for Milan in recent months, I thought had quite a good game, but he didn't really dominate the midfield in the same way as he did in the first one. But I mean, it's a big blow to Milan going out of the Europa League, because it seems like something that they really have invested in this season. Pioli's even said that he's used it to motivate his players, results in earlier rounds. But also, it comes off of the back of a very disappointing result against Napoli at the weekend. I mean, you watched that game as well, Boaz, didn't you? Was that...
Unfortunately, I did.
Yeah, right. So was that more of the same, really?
I think Napoli and Milan played a very entertaining game for the neutrals, and the first half had a few chances for both teams, and ultimately it felt like whoever scored first would go on to win it. Napoli got a very early goal in the second half, courtesy of Politano, who is on loan from Inter, so there's kind of a weird symmetry there, and also he kind of scuffed his shot, so it made it even more painful. But the players you mentioned, Theo Hernandez and Kessie, were off the pace in that game as well. It's felt. I mean, you're playing a bunch of kids, and some of these guys, as hard as they try, they're not. They know probably that they're not starters. Milan are into their third lines now. But you have to give credit to Napoli. They played a good game, and they definitely didn't steal the victory. There was a really good battle on the left with Insigne causing Dallo all sorts of trouble. He's a fantastic player, Insigne. And as an aside, it was really comical to see Captain Insigne, 5'4", 5'5", shake hands with Captain Donnarumma, who's 6'3", I believe. So it was very
large.
Yeah, it was a strange one. What else can I say? I mean, it's nice that this is a little dig, but it's nice that Gattuso finally got a win at San Siro, something he wasn't too capable of when he was managing Milan. And the same can be said for Politano, who was notorious for kind of playing whenever Inter couldn't get a win. So it was a disappointing result, but I think, as we said over time and time again, the hard work starts now. And Milan, now that they're out of Europe, there's no excuse to not focus on the league and just get it over the line.
Yeah, I mean, probably the case that the Scudetto challenge is gone now when we see what happened Inter Torino as well. But is Champions League qualification even at risk now for Milan? Would you feel?
So, having gone on an incredible run of 38 consecutive league games where they scored a goal, Milan have not scored now in 4 of their last 9 games, losing on 4 occasions in these games. I think, as I said, Milan have to pull up their socks, and we've said all season that the top positions, everything is very tight, and any slip up will lead to another team taking advantage. In Milan's defense, or something on the back of the mind, is that yes, they still have to play Atalanta and Juventus away, but some of the clubs chasing are also playing each other. Roma and Napoli are playing this weekend, so there will be points won and lost for other teams as well. But it would be really disappointing if Milan didn't make the Champions League, having had such a phenomenal 2020. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of calendar year stats anyways, and so I think the real point to prove is to get it over the line by the end of the real season.
Yeah, someone that won't be picking up any points this weekend, obviously, are Inter. We mentioned there that they won 2-1 in Torino, but the most recent news there, obviously, is that there's been this COVID outbreak. So the latest two players to test positive today, as we record, are De Vries and Vecino. Before that, obviously, Andanovic, and the first person of this particular outbreak to test positive was D'Ambrosio. So that means that their game this weekend against Sassuolo is going to be postponed. And we made a lot, Boaz, about how, Inter, with a week to prepare under Conte, obviously are unstoppable. We obviously don't know what the impact's going to be on Inter's fixtures beyond this weekend from this. But could Inter be losing that advantage? Could they have Juve and Milan behind them, now both out of Europe, with the ability to prepare for a week, whereas Inter have to cram in matches? Are we calling the checkered flag on the title race too early?
Well, first of all, the fact that this game was called off is further proof that Serie A is kind of or Fiduci is kind of a clown outfit. It's not really clear why they made such a big deal of the protocol at the beginning of the season, when clearly some clubs are following it and other clubs are completely ignoring it. For this game in particular, the health authority of Lombardy, and where Milan is, called this game off. But if you think back to January, Milan played Juventus without 4 players with COVID. Likewise, I think Juventus played Inter without a few players with COVID. So I'm not really sure why in this particular case, I'm doing air quotes, but with just 4 players out, this is a health issue. Having said that, it's impossible to know how much this will spread through the squad and how long these players will take to recover. And it could definitely affect them. But I think of all the squads, maybe with the exception of Juventus, the one team that can cope with mass injury or mass exodus due to COVID is Inter, because they have probably 2 great players in every position or in most positions.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced that Inter without Lukaku are the same side. I think he's the guy who's made the difference. He's obviously not among the players that have tested positive, but we don't know how far this COVID outbreak is going to extend. Obviously, it's still we're 2 days into it.
It's interesting you mentioned Lukaku, because Italian former Serie A player and current TV commentator Lele Adani said that whenever Lukaku is on the pitch, Inter start 1-0 up, and the way the matches are going, that's like so true.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that. And I mean, this COVID, obviously, it's affected everyone's lives, but it feels strange on a podcast to constantly be talking about the pandemic. I mean, part of the reason, I guess, that we started this podcast was to have something to distract us from that. But it's also at the center of one of the other big stories from earlier this week, with Napoli's postponed game, which was, I think, match day 4 or something against Juve, which was initially scheduled to be played this week, and that has been postponed until the beginning of April. Roma taking exception to this earlier this week, because they obviously themselves had a Europa League game, but they say that this favors Napoli over them ahead of their big game this weekend. I mean, I can kind of see where they're coming at. The circumstances have dictated that this favors Napoli in this particular situation. But I mean, do they really have grounds to complain about this, would you say? Because for me, it's kind of like, you've kind of just got, especially in these circumstances, you've just got to play the cards you're dealt, really.
I get the feeling that this is kind of the Friedkins posturing a little bit, showing their nails. So far, their whole management style has been very laissez-faire, and they've kind of been praised for taking a back seat and taking it all in before making any decisions. And this is the first time, I think, where they've said, they've come out as a club and said something that's slightly out of line. But realistically, if they look at Serie A in the past 3 or 4 seasons, matches that get postponed are usually it's usually agreed between the two clubs when the game will be played again. And this situation has happened time and time again, including for Roma. So it's kind of a little bit hypocritical of them to complain about it now.
Yeah, and not a great week for them either. They obviously lost 2-0 to Parma at the weekend, and Parma had gone 17 games without a win. So that's going to be a big blow for them in their quest to make the Champions League. Obviously, there are other rivals for that final Champions League spot. Atalanta, Napoli, Lazio. Perhaps I said a few weeks back that they were perhaps falling away a little bit. But if we count them in the equation as well, they're all out of Europe now. So I don't know. I kind of feel like you just spoke about squad depth there. This is the time where I think perhaps Roma's lack of squad depth really could come back to bite them. But let's move on to speak about Juve. Well, let's speak about specifically about Cristiano Ronaldo, who broke Pele's official goal-scoring record this week and actually received a congratulatory message from the great man himself. He scored what I believe is his second fastest hat-trick of his career, the perfect hat-trick with a head, one with the left, one with the right. There was a penalty thrown in there for good measure as well. And it has to be said, an honourable mention for an absolute stunner of a third. I'll just get that in here right now. But he caused a little bit of controversy after, I believe it was after the third goal, when he sort of raised his hands to his ears to kind of say, I can hear you. I can hear the critics referring to, obviously, what was rightly called out as a subpar performance in the Champions League in the week that saw Juventus getting eliminated by Porto. Boaz, what do you make of this? What do you make of Ronaldo's grand gesture, grand statement?
How do I put this nicely without alienating some Juventus fans who listen to us? I feel that Juventus didn't sign Ronaldo to be a tiger on a weekend Serie A game and be a kitten on a midweek Champions League game. And this is the biggest criticism. I think we said it in the last episode. It is okay to criticize the Ronaldo project without criticizing the player, because obviously he's getting the goals, and it's the setup around him that is not necessarily best suited to get them the results they want. Having said that, we really have to raise the fact that Ronaldo shouldn't have been on the pitch to score that hat-trick, because when it was still 1-0, he booted Cranio in the skull, which is funny because Cranio means skull in Italian.
Of course.
But the keeper needed 7 stitches, and to me that is complete violent conduct, whether he meant it or not, whether his foot was fully extended. And for some reason, it was only a yellow. And I think that any other player on the pitch who would have done that would have seen red immediately. So that kind of taints it. And then, as I said, Ronaldo, amongst many of his teammates, was a ghost in the Porto game. So to score against relegation-threatened Cagliari, it's all very good and nice, but it's not why you're getting paid the big bucks.
Yeah, of course. And in the age of VAR, again, not to bring up a recurring theme, but in the age of VAR, there's really no excuse for officials missing that, really, is there?
It's interesting you mentioned officials, because I just want to bring it back to the Milan game. There was this incident towards the end of the match, which is like the epitome of why Italian refs don't use VAR properly or do. There was an incident in the area where Teo Hernandez was tackled by Bakayoko and off the ball, and a very light touch, but if he touched him, it's probably a penalty. But the ball moves on and Osimhen breaks out and Teo Hernandez takes him out completely. It's kind of an orange card, probably a little bit more red than yellow. Ref gives him a yellow, gets called back to VAR to see the penalty and to see the foul, and sticks to the yellow and doesn't give the penalty. Now, I think both those decisions are kind of fair, but it's strange that he's come to those decisions having barely watched the video. And it's the same in the Cagliari game, where I think, as I said, Ronaldo kind of got the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah, okay. The other big midweek action this week, obviously Torino coming back from 2 goals down against Sassuolo with 13 minutes left to play to win 3-2. And I think that was about 2 minutes into injury time that Zaza got the winner there. That actually, we were talking about how Torino were way behind Cagliari, but they're not going to win all of those games in hand that they have. Well, they've actually gone above Cagliari and still have a game in hand. So that bottom of the table is really, really beginning to heat up at the moment. And it has to be said as well that Spezia and Benevento aren't out of the woods either. Elsewhere, I think as a kind of best of the rest, as it were, Bologna beating Samp 3-1, great result for them. It's actually Bologna's 5th consecutive Serie A victory against Samp, and Samp now haven't won away to Bologna since 2003, so obviously a bit of a bogey team there for them. But Barrow with a goal and an assist in that game, and that moves Bologna up to 12th and just 1 point behind Samp, who are in 11th. And one of the teams that I mentioned there are actually threatened with relegation now. Benevento losing 4-1 to Fiorentina. And that's going to bring up an honourable mention, which I'll just put out there just now before we do good week, bad week. And I think it has to be, the first honourable mention has to be for Vlahovic for that first half hat-trick. 2 really, really great poachers goals, but in particular, the third was an absolute cracker. He just basically receives the ball in no apparent danger, really takes one great touch, and then I think even has a look up and then just curls the ball into the far corner. And you actually don't really appreciate how good that goal is until you see it from behind the goal. Just exceptional. I made a lot, and I'm going to self-criticize here. I made a lot of the fact that Fiorentina didn't bother signing a striker earlier on in the season, either in pre-season or in the January window. Well, it kind of seems like they've found one now. That's Vlahovic's 12th Serie A goal, and the vast majority of those have actually come since mid-December, and certainly since Brandali came in. So I'm going to give him an honourable mention. I've already given 2 honourable mentions, and we haven't even got to that section yet. But we better move on to...
I just want to add that he's 1 goal away from being the top goal scorer ever in a season, for top Serbian goal scorer ever in a season, overtaking Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, who scored 12 as well in 2017-2018.
Yeah, he really is coming to the fore, isn't he? Right, we're going to move on to good week, bad week. Let's start off with good week. So we already very briefly mentioned Roma's calamitous result at the weekend. The flip side of that coin is Parma winning 2-0 and ending a 17-game run where they hadn't won. Boaz, I'm going to propose them for good week. Do you have any objections to that? Do you have any alternative suggestions?
You mentioned Bologna earlier, and I think we haven't given them a good week yet. And at least for Mihailovic's nice collector sneakers, it's worth giving him or them.
Oh, right. Controversial. We have a dispute here. I'm going to leave it up to you. If you want to give it to Bologna, seeing as I'm in the hot seat, I think it's right that you choose.
Perhaps, like we did last week, maybe Parma is a good choice because they might never get it again. So let's give them a good week for the sake of variety and spice in life.
Okay. And bad week. I think we discussed this before we started recording, didn't we, Boaz? But I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you say who we have decided has had a bad week.
The reason I'm drinking more than 1 beer on this episode is because Milan have had a bad week, both result-wise, injury-wise, and generally it's a step back. And as we mentioned earlier, it's a big disappointment considering how well things were going in 2020. And once again, they really need to start digging out results and going on a run again.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, they were still in the running for 2 major competitions, and now certainly out of one of them, and arguably out of the running for Serie A as well, as we've already said. Okay, right. honourable mentions now, Boaz. I'm going to let you take the first one because I've already had two. So you have an honourable for Mike Wallace.
I'd like to give a honourable mention to Irish politician Mike Wallace, who, frankly, I don't know much about his actual politics, so this is not an endorsement, just in case. But he showed up for the European Parliament with a Torino shirt on St. Patrick's Day, and when he was asked what's going on, why he's not dressed properly or formally, he said that because it's St. Patrick's Day and because Torino beat Sassuolo as a complete underdog, it was fitting. And apparently he's got a season ticket for Torino, and up until COVID struck, he used to see about 20 games a season. So that's an interesting story. I mean, I'm looking at his picture now. He looks like a member of Spinal Tap. So I mean, I'm really hoping his politics are great too, because he seems like a character.
Yeah, unfortunately, characters in politics don't necessarily mesh with good politics. But I don't know. Like you, I don't know his politics. So.
I'm purposely ignoring it. I'm not looking into it in case it ruins this nice story. But to see some Irish fella in the European Parliament in a Torino shirt is grandiose.
It does look very interesting. You showed me that picture earlier. Right, okay, so I've got an honourable for Daniele De Rossi, actually, who it was announced, I believe it was earlier today, it might have been yesterday, as we record, that he will be joining the Italian national side's coaching staff. So I'm going to give him an honourable for that, because I think he was always a great character on the field, and I know that he's very liked off the field as well. He was linked with a few vacant managerial posts, including the Fiorentina one at one point. But yeah, it's good to see him back in football on an actual footballing basis rather than just being a personality around it. Right, and so Boaz, you've got a dishonourable for Rebic. Whatever could that be for?
I'm actually on the fence whether it's a dishonorable or honorable. Basically, as we've mentioned earlier, Milan have quite a bad injury crisis and could probably do with every single player they can get on the pitch. But Rebic came on in the second half and clearly was very frustrated, and I think a foul was whistled against him, and he said to the referee that I think I saw your mother walking around the streets, prostituting herself in the streets of Naples. Now, the reason I might give him an honorable for this is because if you see the footage, he's so calm when he says it. He's just like,
dear.
It looks like he's like reading his grocery list or something. He's just like, yeah, I need to buy some bread and some eggs. It just, and the ref is outraged. He turns around, he couldn't believe what he's hearing. So definitely a dishonorable for the way he leaves his team without a key player in such a key moment of the season.
Yeah, I think it has to be a dishonorable for that, Boaz, I'm afraid.
Very creative, though.
It is very creative and very bold, let's say. I have got an honorable, my obligatory goal honorable. I've already given one of them out to Cristiano Ronaldo, but for Lautaro Martinez's incredible header and winning goal for Inter against Torino, one definitely to check out on YouTube. How he manages to get his head behind the ball, really, to be honest, from the cross that's delivered, and then how he manages to steer it accurately across the goal. Just an absolutely fantastic finish. So I'm going to give him an honourable for that, and I'm going to suggest that everyone goes and digs that one out on YouTube.
We possibly didn't spend enough words on the Inter victory against Torino, but it's worth noting that Inter are kind of like the Terminator. Even in games where they're not playing well, where things are not going their way, because Torino's goal came off kind of a goal line scuffle, which could have been given as a foul. But anyways, they know how to grind out victories. And once again, I'm forced to say that's the sign of a true champion.
Yeah, victory in adversity is a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true, I guess. Boaz, you've got an honourable for Grifo.
A few months ago, Grifo debuted for the Azzurri, and I mean, our three-man panel rather ignorantly didn't know much about him. It's worth saying that Grifo was visiting an Italian restaurant, and he heard that the owner's nephew had some rare form of cancer and needed a very specific treatment every 4 months. And Grifo knew that this therapy in Italy was not available for this child. So him and a few of his colleagues donated 2 million euros, which allowed them to bring this child to Germany to have this very specific operation. So complete honourable for us.
Yeah, absolutely. What a gesture. And footballers often get a bad rep, but then quite often go and do things like that as well. Really nice gesture. More than a gesture, really, because that's a lot of money to anybody. Right. My final honourable mention of this episode is going to Napoli left back Gulam, who is injured again with another knee injury. This time, an injury, a cruciate injury to his to the left knee. He's just had absolutely horrible luck. I think he's 30 now, so hopefully he'll make it back to the field of play, and I think just a get well soon for him, really. Boaz, a final honourable of the episode, and it's a big one.
As usual, I kind of get the birthday honourables, but this one is all-time classic for Serie A. Giovanni Trapattoni turned 82 this week. As I said, he's one of these guys that is synonymous with Italian football and football as a whole, I think. He won 10 national titles, 7 in Italy, 1 in Germany, 1 in Portugal, and 1 in Austria. He also managed Italy. As we know, there was the infamous Byron Moreno episode, and he was the manager then. To be honest, he was a little bit defensive in that tournament, and we can get into that in a special episode. But while Byron Moreno was a complete asshole, but and that tournament was a complete fraud. Let's face it. But Italy still could have been attacking a lot better. But that's beside the point. He's a complete hero, and he's known for these great quotes like "Stones." When he was in Germany or when he was managing Ireland, he said, "Don't say cat till the cat is in the sack," which I guess is a very bad translation of a famous Italian saying. So, real character. And Kenny, I want to ask you a question. Do you know where Trapattoni ended his management career?
That would have been Ireland, wouldn't it?
You would be right, except he's now managing the Vatican City, who play a game every 9 years, more or less. And last time he managed them was in 2010 to a massive loss. But yeah,
I think that's the very definition of semi-retired, isn't it? It's more than semi-retired. It's like 90% retired.
It's below San Marino level, definitely.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, that's actually all we've got time for this week. I want to thank you, listener, for sticking with us without Oscar again. So we would like to wish him also all the best for a speedy recovery. Other than that, please do subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next week, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. Finita! La Juventus è campione d'Italia questa data, il 6 maggio. Di anticipo, la Roma è campione d'Italia per la stagione 2000-2001. Il titolo del 2008, l'Inter è campione d'Italia, 16° scudetto per la squadra nerazzurra.
Struß ist 2 Jahre hier, gespielt sein Spiel. Ist immer verletzt. Was